Now, joining us now on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Corey Lewandowski is with us. Corey, former campaign manager, Donald Trump for president. Corey now has to testify again in front of Congress, spend more money. Corey, also the author of two best-selling books, Let Trump Be Trump and Trump's Enemies, two best books written on the campaign and the presidency itself. And Corey Lewandowski with us now. Corey, thanks for being with us.
John, it's always a pleasure to be on with you.
Corey, so much to talk about today. I want to start with Robert Mueller, the clown show coming to, or the Ringling Brothers circus. I thought that shut down. Coming to Washington. The town is all in a frenzy now. They all can't wait for some kind of breaking thing to happen. And Mueller's coming in. He's going to testify for 5 hours. What do you look for here, Corey?
You know, I look for Bob Mueller to reiterate exactly what he's already said publicly in his press conference and what he has written about, if anybody has taken the time to actually read Volume 1 and Volume 2 of the Mueller report, and what he hopefully will articulate, which is they did a deep dive. They spent hundreds of man-hours, millions of dollars, had the full weight of the federal government to investigate any potential collusion between the Trump campaign and any other outside entity, and they found none. And what I hope Bob Mueller is going to go on to say was that evidence was so clear so early on that they went on to look at other things. And what we've seen now is, you know, Paul Manafort and Michael Cohen and Roger Stone and others caught up in the periphery of this. But the truth is the Trump campaign had no collusion, and there was no obstruction of justice whatsoever. So if Bob Mueller wants to continue to maintain his integrity and intellectual honesty, I hope he reads directly from the report what he found and what his investigators found, which was no collusion, no obstruction.
So why is he testifying?
Look, he did not want to testify from all of the accounts that I have read. He was subpoenaed to do so. That I think the Democrats think that they're going to put him under oath and he is going to say things that aren't already known. What we do know was that his report has been available to the Democrats, the unredacted report. Now, there are significant questions that still need to be answered from what Bob Mueller investigated. And specifically, we want to know how the FISA abuse process began, who authorized the FISA applications to spy on American citizens on domestic soil because of their politics. I want the Republicans to ask Bob Mueller, how high of an investigation did you get with the previous administration? Did you find individuals in the previous administration who were aware of this rogue operation, Operation Crossfire Hurricane, as the FBI dubbed it? What penalties, if any, are Peter Strzok and Lisa Page going to face? What penalties, if any, are Jim Comey going to face? Did they break the law? I believe they did. I think the American people believe they did. When will those people be held accountable? And if Bob Mueller does not have answers to those questions and did not investigate Hillary Clinton's campaign for taking $5 million of campaign money, giving it to a law firm to go out and hire Christopher Steele, a former British spy, which is a clear violation of the Federal Elections Commission laws. She has not been prosecuted once for that. Then what exactly are the facts that Bob Mueller followed? I want the Republicans to ask those questions, and I don't think he's going to have the answers for them.
Corey, could this backfire on the Democrats? I mean, if the Republicans he's going in front of two committees, right? House Intel and Judiciary. Who's the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee? The gentleman from Georgia, Collins, pretty tough former prosecutor. Could this backfire on the Dems?
I think it can. Look, John, I really believe, and I think your listeners will agree with this, we're beyond, this investigation now. We were 675 days is how long Mueller and his team were stood up investigating the president. They spent tens of millions of dollars, and he came to the same conclusion that I knew from day one: no collusion, no obstruction. But the Democrats want to continue on this narrative because for the 7 months that they've held power in Washington, D.C., controlling the Congress, they can't point to one significant piece of legislation that they have passed to help the American people. And so when you have no agenda, what you are required to do in order to try and keep your power is to tear down the other side, to try and make a narrative which is false. And I think that this charade of Bob Mueller coming up to Washington, D.C. in July of 2019, thinking that's going to impact the president negatively, is a complete farce. This is going to backfire on the Democrats, because I think people like Doug Peterson and Jim Jordan on that committee and Matt Gaetz are going to be ready for the questions to Bob Mueller of why he didn't continue to investigate the crimes that we know were committed by the Hillary Clinton campaign, not the least of which, not one person from the Clinton campaign that I know of has been indicted or been held account for any of the things that took place there.
John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth Across America. We're with Corey Lewandowski, former campaign manager, Trump for president, best-selling author, New York Times, Let Trump Be Trump, Trump's Enemies. Buy them. Just go to my website, johnfredericksradio.com. They're right there. Click on it, Amazon, or put in your favorite bookstore. You get them in 2 days. Must-reads. Corey, yourself personally, you have to go back now and testify again, spend more money. At what point does this just become a leveling of abuse on you and Hope Hicks and others that have to keep draining their families' resources to defend things you didn't do anything wrong?
John, I'll tell you, it's really disturbing when, and I'm not the only one to see this, but when the full federal government, the investigative body, when Congress decides that they want to go after a person, and you can ask Carter Page and you can ask George Papadopoulos and so many other people, you're almost powerless, because you're now forced to go out and hire attorneys to defend you against something that you never did wrong, for a crime you never committed. And in this instance, you're basically guilty until you're proven innocent. And it's a very broken system, because Congress, by their sheer design, has unlimited resources to go after people. They've got all the attorneys on staff. They can drag you in front of these committees as often as they want to. And there's really nothing you can do other than go and try and defend yourself against baseless accusations that you were involved somehow in either collusion or conspiracy or obstruction, none of which, I've ever been accused of. But to go back and have to account for these things, what will then be my fourth time in front of Congress, I don't know what new information I would have the opportunity to provide that I haven't already provided. I've been more than willing to give Congress any information, and the Mueller investigators any information that they wanted to hear about my tenure during the Trump campaign. And I was clear from day one. I never communicated with a Russian. I never had anything to do with any foreign entities. I didn't speak to foreign officials. I didn't try to manipulate the system. And I have said from day one, if anybody broke the law, then I think that they should go to jail for the rest of their lives if they were trying to impact the outcome of an election in a legal way. But there's been two separate sets of rules, John. One for the Trump campaign and the people who went on to win the election, and one for the Hillary Clinton campaign. We have not seen Podesta or anybody else be brought in front of Congress to account for the crimes that we know that they committed. And it's shameful. We have not seen any of that. And so, for me and people who are in my situation, who chose to work in politics for a political campaign, to continue to have to go up and defend themselves for that decision is a real abuse that Congress is having on individuals like me and my family, and the sheer cost to it is astronomical. And I'm not complaining, for me, other than to say this is a Congress run amok, and Chairman Nadler is doing this simply for retribution, because I have nothing more to add to any potential testimony that I had already given over the course of 20-plus hours in front of Congress.
Corey, this sounds abusive to almost all of our listeners. I've had so much feedback over this. Is this simply the politics of personal harassment and financial destruction of Trump supporters early in the campaign? Are you just simply being punished by the Democrats financially to destroy your family in order to just basically send a message to, don't work for Trump? Is that the issue here?
That's a very logical argument, John, because, look, if you're a staff person and you're trying to think about your future, and you say, hey, I want to go on to the Trump campaign for the 2020 reelect, but I've seen what people who were involved in the campaign have gone through, whether it's Corey Lewandowski or others, you start to question, hey, is this really the right thing for me long term based on the political and economic ramifications, even by winning? And that's not what's supposed to happen.
Right.
You're supposed to be able to choose the side that you want to play for. You play your heart out. You leave everything you can on the field, and when it's done, it's done. But that's not what this Congress has done. What they have done is they want to penalize people for their political beliefs, even though they did nothing wrong. And let me tell you something. The Republicans didn't do this to Hillary Clinton. There was no investigation into her campaign. There was no investigation into the emails that were all deleted. And I think that's a missed opportunity only because, right, what is happening to the people who are associated with Trump, either working in the White House or working part of his campaign, is they are being penalized for supporting a candidate. It's the first time in modern history we've seen something like this happen, and it's a very, very dangerous precedent.
It's really unbelievable what they're putting you and your family through, and just basically draining your resources and wiping out your college fund because you took a job for a presidential candidate like me who you happen to believe in from the beginning and believe in his policies. You did nothing wrong, and now you're just being punished for having worked for him. I mean, you really think about it in America. I mean, the clown squad talks about, whatever nonsense they do about people being discriminated against. And when you take your situation and the level of abuse and harassment that has gone on simply because you took a job for somebody that you believed in his policies and helped elect president of the United States, and now you're getting punished for that financially, is unbelievable. I mean, this really is such a big story. Nobody will cover it. Fox doesn't even cover it. It's kind of gone under the radar screen. And, yourself and Hope and other people that have done this, there's no Corey Lewandowski legal fund, right? There's no GoFundMe page like the guy that
there isn't. Believe
Peter
me.
Strzok got.
Because if there was, I'd be very grateful for it. And look, I'm not
I know.
complaining in that sense. But John, I'll tell you what. Just think about this for 1 second. Think about if the Republicans were doing this to the Clinton campaign, or if they were doing this to the other Republicans who lost in the primary field, right? This would be the front page news of every single newspaper forever, that the president is vindictive and that the Republicans have a vendetta and that they're going after these people for their politics. But as we've seen so many times, John, the legacy media has two different sets of rules, one for themselves and one for the Trump campaign and the Trump associates and the Trump people. And so when something happens to the Trump people, oh, don't worry, he deserves it. They're racist, they're xenophobics, they're homophobics, whatever it is, right? It's okay to call them names, to disparage us, to say whatever you want. But as soon as someone calls into question, right, a philosophical difference by a person on the other side of the aisle, or who has a different skin tone, they're racist, they're xenophobic, they hate women. It's two different sets of rules. And look, if that was not more evident on Sunday of this week, when Liz Cheney was on the Sunday shows, Adam Schiff was interrupted 0 times when he spoke. Liz Cheney was interrupted 12 different occasions by the Sunday talk show host. And then at the end of the interview, the talk show host said, it's too bad we didn't have more time to talk about Iran. And Liz Cheney said, well, that's because all you want to talk about is racism and how this president's a racist, as opposed to really covering the story. And it was so quintessential, the difference between the way Democrats are treated on television and the way Republicans are treated. I think the American people are waking up to this. They've seen it now for the last 2.5 years, and they're tired of it. And that's why the legacy media continues to fail, and that's why they have less and less influence every day. And it is scaring them to death going into the 2020 election, because they can't afford 4 more years of the Trump administration going directly to the people and telling them what's happening.
Well, because they're lying and it is fake news. And you look at that interview, you're right. I mean, Adam Schiff, they treat him like he's king of the earth, and Cheney comes on, she gets interrupted 12 times. And, I tell you what, Corey, there's a lot of us that are just being sick and tired of being called racist because we happen to believe in the president and his America First policies and this economy that is creating a record number of jobs. Income is going up. Families are better off. Jobs are coming back. We're standing up to China, and somehow because of that, we're racist. And as far as what the president said, I mean, maybe, um, it could have been interpreted one way or the other, but he's not a racist. And as I've said on the air 100 times, I mean, my father had a sticker on his car that said "America, love it or leave it," and he voted for Humphrey in '68. My father wasn't a racist. He just didn't like people trampling on the U.S. and the flag. He was a veteran. He said, "I almost died for the country that I love. I'm not going to have people burning my flag," right? So this has nothing to do with racism. But look, they can't talk about the economy, right? They can't talk about jobs. They can't talk about unemployment down to lowest levels. They can't talk about record GDP. So what do they talk about? Race. They have nothing else.
John, it's so easy. The easy way out is to call someone a racist, right? That's the easy thing to do. When you disagree with a person who doesn't look exactly like you, in other words, the only person that I guess I can publicly disagree with is a 45-year-old white male who's half Polish and half French Canadian. Because I guess that's the only way that I can't be called a racist. And maybe if they're 52% one or the other, I'll still be called a racist. But as soon as you call into question their value system and their policies that you disagree with, you're a racist. That's not what this country was built on. This country was built on having the opportunity to call out other people's policies because you don't agree with them. And the president can call out and should be able to call out socialism when he sees it and say it's capitalism versus socialism. It's about, the desire for people to go to work every day and the job creation that he has as opposed to everybody getting everything for free. It is a fundamental different philosophy. That's not racism. That's a dialogue. But when they can't go after the president on those things, it's just much easier to call him a racist. And we've seen AOC plus 3 call Nancy Pelosi a racist because they called into question, Nancy Pelosi called into question a policy that AOC plus 3 had and didn't like it. So all of a sudden, the lowest common denominator is to call her a racist. And look, John, what that does for people in our country is much more detrimental than having an open and honest discussion about saying, hey, if you think illegals should come into this country and get free college education and free health care, that's your opinion, but let's discuss the merits of that. Simply calling somebody a racist because you disagree with them is really detrimental to our long-term success of this country. And the media has perpetuated this narrative because you're right. They don't want to talk about the economy. They don't want to talk about jobs. They don't want to talk about what the president has done for the African-American community. They don't want to talk about the $9 trillion in stock market value that he has created since he's gotten in, or the 6 million new jobs. I wrote an op-ed that came out yesterday. We're the hottest economy in the world. We are the envy of the world right now, the United States is, because of the tax cuts and the pro-growth environment right now and the deregulation of this president. And you would think that our country is falling apart the way the media treats this president. If it was Barack Obama, they'd be fawning all over him and be awarding him another Nobel Peace Prize.
It's the hypocrisy, Corey, is beyond the pale. But you're right. If you criticize someone now, their policies, and they're anything but I guess, white male, you're called a racist. Even if they're a female, you're called a misogynist. I mean, it's becoming theater of the absurd. It's like going into the Wax Museum or stepping into the Cartoon Network with half these people. I've only got a minute and a half here, but I'm getting a lot of feedback negative on the president's deal with the Democrats to extend the debt, get rid of the debt ceiling through the next election. Look, I'm in favor of it. Government shutdowns for Republicans are a disaster. We've got an election coming up in Virginia. If the government shuts down for 8 days, all the Democrats win. I mean, how many times are we going to go down the same path? It's like the Peanuts cartoon, Charlie Brown kicking the football. She picks it up, you fall on your butt. After 50 times, stop doing it. I don't know what choice the president had, but I'm getting a lot of negative feedback from people via text and other social media. What did you think of the deal that the president made?
Well, John, look, as your listeners know, I'm a fiscal conservative, and so I don't love the idea of continuing to add to our $21 trillion deficit and passing that on to the next generation, the generation after that. But, Washington, D.C. is fundamentally broken, and a government shutdown does not benefit anybody today, tomorrow, or in the future. So I believe that if we've made the commitment to fund these programs in the government, we have to do that. But that being said, Republicans missed a huge opportunity when they had control in the first 2 years to pass, a line item veto bill that they could have done. They could have passed so many things to restrict government spending, and they chose not to because, John, as you know, it's the swamp, and everybody has their own pet projects, and
Right.
the president doesn't have the opportunity to go line by line and decide what he wants and what he doesn't want. So he's presented
Right.
a big piece of legislation, and he either signs it and the government stays open, or he vetoes it and the government closes, and that doesn't work. So you have to get this done, but we do need to look big picture so that we're not doing this, as you said, just like Charlie Brown kicking the football. Every year, every 2 years, we're about to go bankrupt. We need to do better for the next generation.
Well, hopefully we can do that. Corey Lewandowski, I want to thank you for that perspective. Good luck with your testimony in Congress. We'll see you soon in a couple of days. John Fredericks Radio Network, trucking the truth across America.